Good afternoon, everybody. This is Susie Squire. I'm the president of the Retail and Hospitality ISAC. Welcome to the second in our series of 6 Ecom Pinnacle presentations. As folks are filing in, we want to welcome you. The goal of this series is to provide information on the top controls, key issues, and significant best practices for secure, efficient, and compliant e-commerce environment. Tala Security will be leading this discussion today with a retail partner on challenges and opportunities in their journey to implementing robust e-commerce controls that will prevent the online storefronts from leaking sensitive data. Key takeaways will include steps e-commerce customers can take to assess and test security solutions, balancing the needs between security, privacy, and marketing teams, and working toward the ultimate goal of optimal user experience and securing your customers' data. We would love to have questions from the audience at the end of the conversation. We have a chat box, so please enter them in there, and we can read them off at the end. Excuse me. Just for your awareness, we are recording this session. And for right now, I would like to introduce you to Mike Rogers, Senior Director of Solutions Architecture for Tala Security, and Ronny Ong, Technical Architect for readingglasses.com. Mike, I'll turn it over to you.
Susie, thank you so much, and thank you everyone for taking time out of the day to join us. So today, as Susie mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit about security controls, how that you can really, I'm going to take this down into a discussion about protecting your sensitive data and mitigating risk in your retail web application supply chain. And obviously, it's a very important topic around supply chain and bringing vendors into the mix, and how that impacts your ability to stay ahead of the continuously evolving threat landscape. And in terms of an agenda, we'll take a minute or two, do a little brief introduction. We'll talk about the web supply chain, the challenges that presents, and then some of the tactics that we're using, we offer at Tala, and Ronnie and the team at Reading Glasses are using to secure their browser experience for their users, and kind of what this means in terms of the day-to-day security operations. These are complex, things to manage that we feel like we've done a pretty good job of making simple for our customers. So in terms of introductions, Ronnie, maybe you can say hello. Ronnie oversees all the planning and implementation operations for systems at Reading Glasses.
Right. So I got started in 2003, mainly concerned with the integration of all our various systems. We started as a chain of brick and mortar stores, and so obviously we still have legacy point of sale systems in the stores. We've got inventory management systems, which have to, of course, bridge and span our online channel as well as our brick and mortar channel, and the usual, accounting, customer service, support, that kind of thing. And, I got into security because, those interfaces between systems tend to be very attractive to attackers as a potential weak spot, and I got into security at that point, and have started as e-commerce became more and more of our business, that just drew me more and more into security and privacy type aspects.
Thanks, Ronnie. My role here at Tala, I'm responsible for working with our customers to help them really understand this problem space, think about look at their technical architecture, the way that their systems are interconnected, and the vendors that they've brought into the mix, and really help put in the right solutions for protecting that web supply chain, making sure that data isn't leaking out where it's not supposed to be. Prior to this, I spent 6 years in the bot space, right? Kind of building out the business there around mitigating automated attacks. But enough about me. A little bit more about Reading Glasses. Ronnie, maybe you want to talk a little bit about the history of reading glasses and how you guys got started and where you are today.
Yeah, so we were founded on a principle that eyewear, and in particular off-the-shelf reading glasses, back in the 80s, we're cheap, we're widely available, but frankly, just horrible to look at. Just something you would only pull out when you absolutely needed them. And so our business concept is around the whole designer look, applying to the designer look to all types of eyewear, whether it be off-the-shelf reading glasses, sunglasses, reading sunglasses, and even prescription eyewear. And because of that, we have a bit of an upscale clientele. Not everybody is necessarily interested in top designer looks, and that's fine. But it also means that we have a discriminating customer, someone that we really want to focus on a great customer experience for, and so that's kind of what led us to look at the problems with browser side security. It would be easy to say, hey, we're a merchant, we're responsible for our web server, and as long as we're taking care of our systems, that's all there is to it. That would be easy, but we feel like, hey, we're the owner of the entire customer experience. Whether other parties are trying to horn their way in on it or not, the buck stops with us, and so that's kind of been our attitude toward wanting to get ahead of the game in terms of browser side security.
Yeah, and I think like a lot of businesses, right? When we talked and preparing for this, and I was learning more and more about your business. You guys are not unlike a lot of retail organizations, right? I mean, you guys have the same sort of high level goals.
Sure.
I think the idea that you just said there, and it kind of your overview about talking about what it means to delight your customers or provide the best service, take full ownership of the entire experience end to end. I think that means a lot, and
right, and I don't want to sell short the the point of protecting customer data, because that's obviously the big draw here for most people is the notion that anytime there's a risk of leaking personal information, whether it be credit card data, whether it be a passport number, driver's license number, whatever the case may be. Obviously we certainly want to be concerned about that and stop that as well. But for us, the item on this list, retain customers, took a special importance, and it started several years ago when we began to get inquiries and complaints, from customers. Shoppers would come to our site and email us or fill out our feedback form, and they would say things like, I really wanted to buy from your site until you started popping up these ads for weight loss pills and magazine subscriptions, and that really turned me off. And when we got that, well, of course, the first time we got it, we thought, well, this is a mistake. They meant to send that to some other site they were on. It couldn't possibly be us they were thinking of. But we continued to get those kinds of inquiries, and obviously that became very concerning. And we spent a lot of effort on trying to figure out what could be going on, because we certainly would never do anything like that. We don't even pop up ads for ourselves on our own site, much less anyone else. We don't have affiliate relationships where we would try to send someone to a magazine subscription site or a weight loss site. That's not in our DNA. And so when we looked into this, what we found was JavaScript injection happening. And of course, like anyone else, you know, we'd kind of gone through that growing period where, you know, everybody learns about the dangers of SQL injection and back-end type injection attacks. But we were fairly new at that time to the notion that JavaScript could be injected into the end user's browser without necessarily even breaching the network security or the service security of the site that they're on. It can be done through third parties that, you know, that our site happens to use for various, you know, marketing services, analytics, you know, that sort of thing. It can be done that way, but it could also be done, what we found a lot of were cases where shoppers had downloaded and installed a shady browser extension. Typically, these are known as shopping toolbars, and they make promises like, "Hey, you know, just install this, and when you're shopping on the web, we will automatically plug in the best coupon codes for you, or we will warn you if you're about to pay too much." And in fact, there are some legitimate toolbars and extensions like that out there, but there's also some that are malicious, and some of them even started as legit and then later on got sold to some dirty players and became malicious at that point. And they may very well do what they claim, but in addition to that, they will you know, spy on you, steal data as you're entering it into forms, or in our case, you know, like I said, they popped up ads which annoyed people, caused them to abandon their carts on our site. And it's not hard to imagine, although we didn't have a specific instance that we caught of it, but it's not hard to imagine that you know, if you can pop up these things, you could also lure people to one of our competitor sites. And that's so right. You know, that really sold this for us. You know, the notion that people could come in and hijack our sales funnel, you know, steal our conversions right from our checkout page. They right. You know, could get people to leave. And so, you know, the retaining customers item on this list, that had kind of some special importance because of what we experienced.
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, end of the day, you know, the attackers are, you know, you said so much of that we're gonna talk about in the rest of this. You know, hijacking customers, getting in, you know, placing malicious ads that are trying to, you know, steer folks to some other product, or, you know, sitting there as like a skimmer, a form jacking, those kinds of problems. That really is what Tala came to the party to solve, right? When our founding team, led by Anand Krishnan, you know, a premier technologist, you know, when they were working several years ago together and at Symantec and looking at things like the Target POS point of sale breach and saying, hey, we're seeing these attacks happen in the world where people are compromising a supply chain, getting malicious code to run at a client, and stealing data and exfiltrating it off to another location. It was kind of just that moment where everything sort of came together. There were always the bands of you know, bad guys out there that were doing similar attacks on the web, but really taking and saying, hey, look, there's this thing now that's Magekart, and it really applies to the same kind of paradigm and protection mechanisms that you might apply in your data center into your databases and the like, and what have you. How does that actually change the world of e-commerce when, you know, you have this unmanaged clients, so many unmanaged clients that are out there? That became the sort of the thesis statement. How will these attacks change? And when they took that idea around, got great investment, we've won a number of awards, and we put together a great team of folks that came from all across the industry to say, hey, let's attack and solve this problem. So we, you know, we're really excited about helping organizations deal with this thing, this web supply chain, where, you know, when you think about the kind of the high level of how a web application is put together, you're starting with things like infrastructure, cloud, CDN. You need to have a third party provide you some analytics. Maybe you're going to put advertising. Maybe you need a support or customer success tool baked into your solution, like a help desk, different utilities. Maybe you're delivering video. Maybe you have any number of social. You really can't run an e-commerce store without a real solid mix of all of these vendors. And the thing that they have in common in so many of the cases is it's like JavaScript based things where they'll tell you, Ronnie, I think you said it best when we were kind of talking about this the other day, is that it will give you this one line of code and that's all you're going to need. But in reality, when we look just even at your site, and this isn't any proprietary information that we're sharing here, it's really just, when you dig down under the covers, you see that there's scripts are being loaded. That one line of code says, hey, I'm going to load something from this vendor and another vendor and another vendor and another vendor. And this is the challenge: is how do you know which vendors are playing with which other vendors? What's that full supply chain look like? How do you secure that? How do you deal with this problem? And really, and I'll pause here and let you comment, Ronnie, but this idea that every time you're adding that one line of third-party code, it really is adding significant additional risk to the site. So how do you reconcile that?
And I think it's important to recognize right up front too that a lot of these third parties, I mean, are worth adding. It's not that adding third parties is a bad idea. It's just that it's something we have to do very, very carefully. And our mix, we're like everyone else. We get approached all the time by people who, many of which have great ideas. They've built something that is fantastic. And like you said, the pitch is, hey, it's easy to try us out. We've got a free trial, and all you have to do is just paste in this one line. And of course, that one line, as we know, is a JavaScript include file, which means that it pulls in thousands of other lines from a web server that is under that vendor's control. Now, there are some vendors that do better jobs than others at keeping their servers locked down. A lot of times what we find is that if the bad guy comes in and adds their stuff, maybe to the end of the vendor's code instead of replacing the vendor's code, then the vendor's code still does what it does. And a lot of times, when vendors are monitoring the performance of their systems, they say, hey, we're still collecting our data or whatever we do, so there can't possibly be anything wrong. So they just don't have an inclination that there might have been a breach, that they should go looking for intrusions, and some of this stuff can just sit out there for a very long time. And so we realize that it's something that we really have to keep an eye on. So we have not shied away from adding third parties. That's absolutely not something we're going to do. The mixture of third parties you illustrated just a slide ago. I mean, that mix is changing all the time because we're constantly welcoming new folks in to see if there's some value they can add to us or add to our customers. And we're always going to do that, but now we, with Tala and some of the procedures that we've changed internally with Tala's help, we're now kind of keeping an eye on things, and we're using tools to help us keep an eye on things. And one of the great things about Tala's solution in particular is it's low fuss. It lets us, spend as much time as we feel like we want to, but it can also kind of go on autopilot. There's options for, just kind of choosing our criteria and let it kind of cruise or just coast for a while. And so that's one of the things that's been great for us.
Don't jump ahead on me, Ronnie, but I want to linger a little bit on this because I think it makes sense, to kind of just reiterate, right? When we're looking at this problem, and the bad guys are always looking for the weakest link, and I know that I spend a lot of time in my job either doing security assessments for vendors that we might be doing work with, or by responding to security assessments. And generally a lot of organizations, that's kind of the way that we try to solve the problem is evaluate what security measures other folks might have in place. But at the end of the day, the way your website works, and anybody's website works, is that you have your code and infrastructure, and then maybe that you bringing in some third parties, and then there's fourth and fifth and sixth parties. And I mean, it's just a challenge. You really don't have a good way, maybe absent tools like what we offer to say, hey, look, I want to know whether or not that these scripts or other code that I'm including in my site, if they're if they're manipulating the data, and or even if I give someone the permission and authority to operate in my site that I've already vetted or evaluated their code, what if it changes tomorrow? And this idea of not just securing it, but maintaining my privacy, thinking about the compliance concerns, et cetera. These are all challenges that the bad guys know that we're all facing in the e-commerce space, and it's something that we kind of have to address. Really, the goal is they're going to go ahead and modify that code. Maybe it's your code, maybe it's your partner's code, maybe it's their partner's code. They're not going to have the data flow back necessarily to your servers, right? They're going to go ahead and set up something that they can steal the data and pull it right out of the browser into their their command and control server, and no tool like a WAF or anything is going to stop that, right?
Well, not only will it not stop it, but it won't tell us that it's happened.
That's right. That's right. It's a challenge. I mean, end of the day, these are, this is kind of what we see. And, we spend a lot of time, not just in the day-to-day working with folks like you and, as far as providing the solutions here, but we study this on an ongoing basis. We look at the way that the attacks are happening. We, whenever there's a new client-side attack or party that's out there, we're trying to make our product better. We're also looking at the broader internet and saying, hey, what do we see? How are folks adopting the technologies that actually can mitigate this? And end of the day, maybe the challenge would be that we don't see a ton of uptake on this as far as year over year. Really, we see that only 7% of sites are actually effectively deploying the browser's controls that are built into the browser that allow you to get the maximum protection and highest level of security for solving this problem. And not just that, but in terms of when you're doing these includes and in your development process and saying, hey, I want to put this JavaScript here, or I need this data collection here, those scripts are often allowed to run in the context of sensitive forms, right? So in our assessment and evaluation of our, the RHISec membership, we saw that most sites include around 15 domains interacting in the scope of forms and other sensitive data. So it's definitely a challenge. And when we just look at this web supply chain kind of in whole, the kinds of attacks that what we do are going to solve, or really going to enable you to get that visibility and control over, it's a long list, right? The one at the top here, Magekart, if you're in retail and thinking about security, obviously this is an important piece to deal with. But Ronnie, you mentioned it, user hijacking. We've actually seen even cryptojacking, where people put crypto miners inside of JavaScript and try to use your website visitors browsers to mine crypto, right? These are things that are happening all the time, and even more nefarious stuff like session sniffing, session stealing, and the like. It's really all over the place. These adware, customer journey hijacks, malvertising. I don't want to read the whole list, but you can see this is a real challenge.
Yeah, and right now, of course, we're being flooded with talk about ransomware in the mainstream media, but I think that a lot of what you got here is kind of on deck. This is the next generation that's going to become severe enough that you'll start seeing it eventually on the network nightly news. Terms like Magekart right now are mainly circulating in security circles, but I think we're not far away from that eventually will become a household word like ransomware.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about, the way that you can actually address this, right? So I think we've done a good job of setting it up. Here's the problem. Everybody's got a complex ecosystem where there's multi-vendors and layers of vendors, and end of the day, can folks go about addressing this, and what are the real maybe requirements, right? When we're setting out and saying, hey, I want to solve this problem. So most of the customers I talk to would say, hey, look, this is kind of the bottom line. I can't negatively impact revenue and user experience. Maybe you want to chime in a little bit on that point.
Well, when we sat down to understand what it was going to take to get ahead of this whole browser side injection problem, Magekart, et cetera, the things we looked at first were just scanners, things that you kind of run offline in batch mode, very, very simple tools. And the reason we looked at that first, of course, is that we were worried that, hey, if we use something that plugs into our site and layers on top of it and is essentially running all the time, we felt like that had to be high overhead. That had to be something we would want to avoid. But the more we looked into the details and what it was going to take and what kind of burden it was going to place on our crew and how effective the possible solutions were, we realized that, hey, we need to take a look at a more broader solution. And what we found in Tala's offering was really a kind of a comprehensive approach. So yeah, there's the scanning, that's part of it, but there's also a process where report. There's something called a report URL, which gathers feedback. It gathers information back from browsers and kind of slices and dices it and makes it very, very usable for us. And that has turned out to be a very low impact for us, and the amount of helpfulness that it is in relation to the burden or the overhead is just fantastic. And we also found that there was several ways that we could integrate with our site, and certainly the traditional kind of Apache module, loading that into our own web server, that was available, but what we settled on was integration through our CDN, in our case Cloudflare, and Tala is able to integrate as a Cloudflare worker, basically a script that runs at the network edge. And it, at the very beginning, when we first tried to install it, it took a few days to get the kinks worked out, get it tuned. But once we got it going, it has been very scalable, very performant. You really cannot tell that there's anything that has been added that helps us monitor and maintain the security of our customers' browsers. It really is a low impact, and we don't hear about these pop-up ads that are taking people to buy weight loss pills anymore, and it's really given us a break from having that customer service burden to have to answer to. And so it's really been a win all the way around for us.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned kind of the integration points and the like. I'll just kind of tack on a little bit of that to say, look, the way that we approach this problem is through kind of at the core scanning your web application, right? Just kind of how this is working as we have a bot, a crawler that hits your web application. It kind of learns the behaviors of your website, comes up with that full inventory of the vendors and what are the approved behaviors, and then generates from that, some reputational information and make sure that we help you figure out who the vendors are. Is this something that, you know, that you can then look at and say, hey, I'm actually gonna stamp this and say this is good. And with that, and that integration with Cloudflare is the ability to insert the content security policy and, you know, some of the other controls that we offer to secure the running environment in the browser. Really kind of a invisible fence that the code that's running there doesn't necessarily know that it exists, but the browser controls it and says, hey, here's what you can and can't do. And you know, in the back end on our side, you know, we're also monitoring the site, looking at the scripts that are being loaded, alerting you if there are any negative reputation changes to the folks that are, you know, in your ecosystem. And so kind of keeping tabs on that. You mentioned the report URI piece, right? So if anything that is running in the browser goes against that, be it because of someone having a shopping toolbar installed and modifying the code on the page, if anything were to violate the running installed content security policy, our cloud receives a notification about that, and then we dedupe and kind of simplify that for you so that you can do what you need to do. So end of the day, this really, I think what we wanted to give to you and what we wanted to offer you was this way to really simplify the workflow around managing this. Because if you read a lot of the, you know, maybe let's say competitor information around this stuff, they'll talk a lot about how complex this is, but at the end of the day, what we really have done is try to build something that makes this as simple as possible. Because when you look at things like content security policy and solutions therein, as well as the monitoring, et cetera, that we provide, but that core piece of content security policy, it is operating at a higher level than, you know, what's running in the browser. So as far as its ability to control what's happening, you can't really, outside of an individual user explicitly overriding something, you really can't, you know, modify that, right? Any running code has no ability to up level itself to change the content security policy. So there's really a strong way to solve this problem at scale and with really, to your point, no negative impact to the site.
That's true, you know, and we had heard about content security policy before we really got into this project, but you know, we hadn't really dug in, and when we did, it was on the one hand impressive that the browser manufacturers had gotten together and really done a good job of providing kind of the plumbing, the foundation for people to be able to solve the security issue. But then they stopped. You know, there's not a lot of guidance that you can go out and get there without you know, without spending some money and effort. There's not a lot of ease at which you can roll your own total solution to this. You can do partial things, and you know, if you've got a really small site, and we do have kind of a sister site that's very small. We're not currently doing content security policy on, and when we do, we may take a lesser approach. But you know, if you've got a really small, like a WordPress site doing commerce with a plugin, I could imagine that some of those folks may not need a real comprehensive enterprise class solution. We felt like we did. We felt like we wanted to really get ahead of this. We really wanted to solve this once and be done with it, and not have to second guess. You know, did we make an interim solution? No, we felt like we were able to choose kind of a permanent solution to this.
For sure. So in terms of just like, you know, operationalizing this, right? And I've got a couple of screenshots from our portal coming up here. Day-to-day security operations. I mean, hearing what you're saying, ultimately, you know, it's really all about being in low friction and high value, right? Letting you get as much out of this as you want. And you mentioned, I think, kind of, yes, when we talked the other day, and as well kind of today, about, hey, at certain points, this does a bit become set it and forget it. You know, as your site is steady state, you know, there's not a whole lot of interaction. This kind of is working in the background to protect you and make sure that you're not dealing with a lot of you know, a lot of nonsense on a day-to-day basis, or noise that would interrupt your days. You can handle everything that you need to do that extends beyond this.
Yeah, we're really like a lot of folks. When the pandemic hit, it caught us off guard, and you know, we did shuffling. We had a lot of labor that was reallocated. We had attention that had to be reprioritized, and so it was nice that with Tala solution in place, you know, we could kind of detach a little bit and know that you know, by reducing our participation with the tool and our activity tool, we weren't necessarily creating any extra risk. We weren't endangering our customers. And so it's like I said, it's been really nice to be able to let it go on cruise control when we want to, or you know, when the time becomes available, or when we, you know, have a particular issue or project that has come up, you know, we can jump back in. It's a very easy to use thing. It's not the kind of thing you learn and easily forget. And so it's like I said, it's really proven to be kind of a permanent solution for us. It's not something that we've ever had to go back and question.
Yeah. I mean, you know, in terms of day-to-day, you know, there's not a lot of day-to-day, right? Periodic review of the alerts, a little bit of, you know, looking at the scans as there might be broader changes. You know, I don't know, you know, certainly if you were to make dramatic changes to your site, you might want to do another scan. Who knows if you guys may do that at some point. But, you know, manipulating the policy, managing all of that stuff, we try to make it as simple as possible. In terms of, you know, looking at your website and kind of what our portal view looks like, you get this easy view that you can quick at a glance in our dashboard consume, that says, hey, here's what the model of the site looks like. Here's where forms are sending data. Here's connections that are being made. Here's where scripts are being loaded. You can drill down into that, get more information around the that loading sequence, and even identifying things within your code that would, you know, in some cases might violate your best practices. If you've got DOM, cross-site scripting, coding best practices, and something gets into your code, we'll do a script analysis, lightweight static analysis of your scripts, and provide that detail for you, so that you can, you know, you really know whether or not that there are, you know, risks, kind of accept those risks if you want to or not. We're also doing a lot of information, or a lot of analysis of where we're seeing sensitive data. You know, where on those forms, again, like we talked about at the beginning with our study, what sensitive data is present in your site, and which vendors are in the room with that data, let alone, you know, touching it or exfiltrating it. That full view is what we aim to provide and help you really simplify this. I don't want to miss the point, though, that all of this does at the same time include that ability to easily and automatically deploy the generated content security policy relative to this. So you mentioned it, you guys are on Cloudflare. We do have modules that integrate with really any of the common web server platforms. And if there's something out there that, you know, is maybe a little less common, our development team is pretty robust and can support, you know, really almost anything that you guys would need to do this. And, you know, when those reports are coming in from the field, and we see something where, hey, it's a little bit of an eye chart here where you can see that there's a domain new229.com. I mean, this is clearly something that we see that some number of clients here are experiencing this, where there's a malicious include there or malicious connection being attempted, all being blocked, no loss of data. Give you the insight to go dig into this, see if it's something that you need to either action with your own code, action through a third party, or tell if it's related to maybe a malicious extension or the like. Ronnie, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about any of this stuff. I'll pause to give you a moment to sort of add your part.
Well, this right here is really, even though the last slide you showed, looks really pretty. This here, this kind of detail is to me extraordinarily valuable because it's, for us at least, even though we know we're protected, we're safe, that these attacks are being blocked, I would like to know. I would like to know, when they occurred, what they looked like, how many of them we're getting, and this provides me that drill down to detail. And there's a lot of places throughout the Tala portal where there are nice little export or download buttons where we can even extract out kind of some raw data, raw text that we can go and compile and slice and dice into other tools too. And so it's a real flexible way of being able to keep an eye on everything. It takes so little time to just do the basics. But if and when we want to go deeper, there's all these capabilities for doing so.
Awesome. I think, if I just wanted to take a moment and sort of summarize, maybe take what I would say were the takeaways here, right? This problem, I mean, it really is an end-to-end thing. I know a lot of folks maybe think about this and say, well, the browser, I don't have, it's maybe not, maybe that's probably a passe way of looking at it. I think everyone understands, and we're trying to prioritize, put our risk registers together, tackle the things we need to tackle. This one, I think it needs to be higher on a lot of folks' lists, because this data exfiltration problem from the browser, it really is, it's our responsibility as the site operator to make sure that it gets taken care of. And I think it's just as important as the way that we protect the data that's sitting in databases inside of our data center or inside of our cloud. And it really boils down to being a customer first approach, right? You don't want to be one of the folks that gets above the fold in the newspaper about having this happen in CCPA, GDPR, you name it, whatever compliance thing, right? That's just not going to provide the best customer experience. And selecting these solutions, I mean, if I wanted to just distill it down to one thing, it's flexible and approachable, right? You don't want to. Security solutions should be reductive to risk and reductive to effort, right? These things we try to be as simple as possible. And so, choosing something that is out there that's going to, cost you 2 more full-time employees is probably not the right thing, right? You want to be able to quickly deploy, easily deploy, and, have a solution that works. Skimming, right? You hear so much about this credit card skimming and the like. Ronnie, I think you said it the best. I mean, the idea that you're going to have people interrupting your customer journey, I think it's stealing revenue right off of the top line there, right? You don't want that to be something that not only hurts a customer experience now, but in the future. Right, that retaining and keeping customers coming back, so it's just so important. But irrespective of how easy this is, there isn't any way to solve this just right now, one time. It is a journey, right? You're gonna put a little effort into this. Your site's gonna change over time. It is you know, it's one of the care and feeding parts of this, albeit maybe not maybe not the thing that you're going to spend the most of your time on, but having a solution that can jump in there, and when you get so busy with everything else, it just works in the background. It's really important. Ronnie, I don't know if you have
and let me, you know, when you talk about the site changing over time, you know, one of the things that we used to think many years ago, we made a decision that our site would not even offer customers the option of saving their credit cards in their user account. And we, you know, assumed at the time that, well, then that helps protect you know, the credit card information. And of course, we also assumed that, hey, of all the information that we have, you know, credit card that's the sensitive one, that's the important one. And those have turned out to be bad assumptions, or outdated assumptions, I should say, in that, you know, the bad guys have figured out how to steal out of browser memory. So the fact that we don't store anything like a credit card number in our database, it has become completely irrelevant. And
Sure.
And now that we understand that, and now that we know how to really deal with the larger issue and block skimming, now we're actually looking at sometime in the coming months, actually allowing our customers the convenience of storing their credit card. And of course, that will presumably contribute to less friction in our checkout experience, and you know, reduced abandonments at checkout, and improved conversion, that sort of thing. And so this is really, there's so many little benefits that creep in when you really think through this whole process. There are things that we thought were not sensitive, like hey, you know, this shopper has a different ship to address than their bill to address. Well, who cares? And they just have a second address. Well, actually, the crooks have gotten smart enough that now, if they see that scenario, they think, oh, this ship to address probably gives me a clue either to where that person works, or perhaps where they have a close relative who lives. And that may in turn lead me to be able to answer their security questions at some other site they use, perhaps their bank. And you know, basically everything is sensitive now. There's no longer just a focus on hey, ID numbers or card numbers. It's really everything we have to worry about. And so that's been the evolution for us. That's been our journey through this, is wrapping our heads around all of that, and coming out of it with a better idea of where we're going to take our site to in the future.